Welcome to Salesology, conversations with sales leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. When you're ready to transform your sales for today's transforming market, we've got you covered. With your host, the queen of cold calling and founder of Salesology, award-winning author, speaker, sales trainer, and coach, Wendy Weiss.
Hi, and welcome to Salesology, conversations with sales leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. And I'm your host, Wendy Weiss. I am the founder of Salesology and the Salesology Prospecting Method. I'm known as the queen of cold calling. And today I have a very special guest. We are going to be speaking with Bob Howard. He is the founder and the president of Contact Science. And we're going to be talking about using business processes to set more qualified appointments to drive more revenue. So let me give the formal introduction here. Contact Science. Contact Science works with small and mid-sized businesses with appointment setting teams, with inbound and outbound strategies to fill the pipeline by setting more initial appointments. And before founding Contact Science, Bob's background was with business process, including running product development and marketing teams, which focused on using technology for strategic marketplace advantage. So welcome, Bob. I am so happy to have you here today.
Well, Wendy, I'm delighted to be here. Appreciate you reaching out.
Cool. So let's begin and tell all of our listeners, how did you get to be Bob Howard, the founder of Contact Science?
So about 19 years ago, I had left corporate America and wanted to start a company, and I did start a company that was going to use videos to help people get messages across to the folks they wanted to speak with. So we installed this little piece of software in 5 businesses, all different kinds, and it failed miserably in all 5 businesses. So when we went and did an examination of why it failed, what we discovered was it doesn't matter if it was a video or any kind of communication device, prospecting was just hard to do. So what we did is we did a deep drill on why telephone prospecting had that baggage of being so difficult and discovered what we believe is the solution. So that's what we then invented, was this Contact Science software, changed the name to Contact Science. And 19 years later, it's probably the most efficient way to set appointments in the marketplace.
Okay,
so that's how we got here.
Wonderful. So can you tell me a little bit more, tell us all a little bit more about Contact Science and what makes it so efficient?
So I think what we believe is our unique selling proposition, and we also have a patent on it, is we can make appointment setting a business process. And when you think about appointment setting, you might not think about it being a process, but it is. You control everything, and the only things you cannot control are gatekeepers doing what you ask and decision makers doing what you ask. And Wendy, that's how I met you. You have skills training to help resolve the 2 things that you cannot do in this process. But the reason our clients are successful is that they understand now it is a process. They can see every element of it. They can tweak it, continually improve it. And so these programs get better and better over time, simply because it's viewed as a process.
Okay. Could you share a little bit more about this idea of process? Like, what are some of the big don'ts that you see companies that have sales teams that are prospecting or that have appointment setting teams? What are the mistakes that they make that are not business processes?
So I think that the kind of the definition of a process is in advance management, all right? Because this process, success at appointment setting is a manager's game. And what managers have to do initially is decide how they want their dials used. So they have to decide, how many times am I willing to call someone? How frequently to make those calls? If I don't get them, do I want to leave a message? If so, what's the message and how to deliver it? You have voicemails and emails and direct mail and social media and letters, lots of different ways. So they can design a very elegant and effective approach. And their then biggest challenge is how do you actually have a sales rep execute it? And most CRMs, I can quantify a lot of all of this. It's just too hard and people stop doing it. It becomes painful to do. So I think the first thing that most managers get wrong is believing that once they've designed it, their reps will be able to easily and efficiently operate it. And that's simply not the truth. So that's the biggest challenge, I think, is a misperception of what it really takes to do the work to execute a otherwise good cadence or roadmap.
Okay. So, because I know one of the things that I see a lot is managers that just leave everything up to the salesperson. They say, go make some appointments.
Yes. And that's why we think it's really a manager's game. Even skilled appointment setters, if left alone, will kind of wander off the path of success. That's just the nature of salespeople do the same thing. And so even though it's a pretty straightforward skill set and straightforward business process, you have to watch over it. You have to meet with them on a regular basis and treat that process like you treat the review of your pipeline, right? So you ought to review the way that you get people into the pipeline with the same rigor that you view the pipeline itself.
Yeah, and I think that we're probably also talking about two areas when you say getting salespeople or getting that sales rep to dial the phone. And I remember this as being an argument that you and I used to have when we first met. And by the way, everyone, I know Bob Howard because he cold called me. Good for you, Bob Howard. But, and so we've got the process that the sales rep doesn't like to operate the process, whatever it is. And then there's also the sales reps that just don't want to dial the phone no matter what you do.
Correct.
And those are two separate things. So we today, just to be 100% clear, we're talking about the process that salespeople have to operate to get an appointment.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's a lot of reasons why appointment setting programs fail. Call reluctance is a personnel issue. If they don't want to do the work, then you hired the wrong person. But once you hire the person that has the attitude and the aptitude that you believe they need to succeed, and then you need to enable them properly. And there's two areas to enable. One is the efficiency in the process, and that's what my software does, make you very efficient, makes it very easy to do a hard job. And then the effectiveness is training them on what to do when someone says hello. And Wendy, that's where your expertise is. And I think a lot of folks, a lot of managers believe if they hire the right person, they should just know how to do this. And that's not true. They just don't just know it off the top of their head. So skills training like Wendy, like yours, is absolutely necessary. And then giving them the tool to generate those conversations in order to use your skills. That is then what we focus on. But that's also an area where companies fail. They can give them great training. They can put them through your class. They can put them through a class where they know exactly what to do when they get someone on the phone. But the problem is it's too hard to operate whatever process you've given them to get people on the phone. So they then develop a reluctance that's based on the tool.
Yes.
We characterize it as, in many cases, you're giving someone a shovel to rake leaves with. They're never going to succeed raking leaves with a shovel. So you got to give them the right tool.
Right. And salespeople that do not have call reluctance, they just want to dial the phone. They just want to get to dial the phone, talk to somebody.
Yes.
And if the process, if the software, the platform is really unwieldy, where they have to do 15, 20 things before they can actually try to talk to somebody, that just becomes really, really frustrating.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Wendy, that's the reason I've always said that the pain of telephone prospecting is actually physical, right? Because it's a physical issue to sit there and click your mouse and click that tab and bring up that pop-up and go through all those things you have to do once you've hung the phone up to get around to make the next dial. it's a physical challenge.
Yes, it is a physical challenge. Speaking from experience, and just everyone that's listening in, we use contact science I have 2 appointment setters. They use contact science. So it does. I know you've done some benchmark studies because you say contact science is an efficiency tool.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share some of the benchmark studies that you've done?
So I think the biggest study we did was to look at CRMs. And we would look at Salesforce, we would look at ACT, we would look at Zoho, we would look at some of the marketing tools that claim to be CRMs like HubSpot and Infusionsoft. And what we would do is we would imitate calling 10 people in a row. And so we had little clickers. So every time you clicked your mouse, we would click our little counter. And every time a screen popped up that you had to interface with, we'd click it again. So we were measuring the number of clicks and the number of screens that it takes to process 10 names in a row. So what we found with all of those CRM style programs is that they are built to be kind of event capture. And as a result, it was nothing to do 250 mouse clicks and navigate 120, 130 screens, and could take you 30, 45, maybe even 50 minutes. But think about it, hundreds of clicks to do 10 pursuits and over 100 screens. So in the contact science, which is a process engine, we could do the same thing with 40 clicks and 11 screens. So several orders of magnitude easier to do when you treat it as a process.
So what would you say to someone that manages a sales team and they've never thought of this before? Let's say that the idea that this is a business process is brand new. Where would you tell them to start?
So here's what I tell them to do. I would go to contactscience.com, go to my website, go down to the bottom of the website, and I have a paper on how you can do an efficiency checkup with your current sales team. And it's 3 simple steps. It's outlined in the document, but it will allow you to examine this idea of efficiency. And it'll walk you through the areas that you are probably not as efficient as you could be. But it's eye-opening. It's for folks that have done it. They go, I never thought about this. And my poor sales reps, I've been torturing them for years, having them use a CRM. But that's what I go, contactscience.com, go to the bottom and download that PDF on a checklist on how to be more efficient.
Okay. Can you share the 3 steps? I know there's going to be a whole lot more detail in the PDF, so everyone should go to Contact Science and download it. However, what are those 3 steps that you want to check?
So I think the first thing you want to check is, what do you think is the ideal way to pursue people? You as the manager, you've got experience. You may have done this in the past. What would you like to see your reps do? And then go see what the reps are doing. You may find these reps are on their own. They're just winging it. So you can find that there's an inefficiency in the dials that they have because they're doing it in a random way. Now, the second thing you want to do is say, okay, let's assume that we're all on the same page, me and the reps. Then go to your platform and ask your reps, hey, listen, show me what you do. I just want to see what it takes for you to call 2 or 3 people in a row, and watch and just mentally see how many clicks, how many screens, and just get a sense for the degree of difficulty. And most managers that have done that step will come back and say, I don't know how they do it at all. Because when I see what they have to do, in the back of my mind, I'm going, I could never do that, for even an hour. Then the third thing that you want to do, because as a manager of a process, you got to be able to measure it. So I give you some suggestions on what are the most effective metrics to use to measure performance. And you can then look in your toolkit and see if those metrics are even available. In most cases, they're not. So anyway, those are the 3. You want to look and see what you think should be done and compare it to what they're doing. That's always eye-opening. Then you ought to then ask somebody, so whatever you're doing, show me how you do it. And in the back of your mind, you're going to go, I'd never do that. And then if you're going to really measure someone, there's very specific metrics to use. And I'll show you what those are and challenge you to see if it's in your reporting capabilities. Typically, it's not. Appointment setting is so unique. Most CRMs don't even have a metric approach towards appointment setting.
Yeah. So what are some of the basic metrics that someone ought to be, someone that manages a sales team or an appointment setting team, what are the basic metrics that they need to be looking at?
So if you go back to process, the two core metrics of any process is let's measure efficiency and let's measure effectiveness. Now, efficiency is typically called a conversation ratio. So you look at the number of people that you pursued and you see how many appointments how many conversations did I generate? So you could have had
with decision makers, right?
With decision makers, absolutely.
Okay, that's an important part with
right.
Decision makers.
It can't really be a conversation if you aren't talking to the person you want the appointment with. So you're absolutely right. So if you look at that, and let's say that I pursued 100 people and I got 10 people to talk to me, I have an efficiency rating now of 10%. 10% of the people I pursued talk to me. Right. So the second part then is effectiveness. And effectiveness is basically out of those 10 people, how many appointments did I set? And if I set one appointment, then I would have a 10% appointment ratio. So I would then have a rule of thumb that says, well, for every 100 people I pursue, I should get an appointment. Right? Now, every market is different. We see some markets where you're at 12% and 18%. We see a lot that are 8% and 12%. So your product and market will at some point, you'll find what those two ratios should be. But those are the two. Now, the second number that you want, Wendy, if you really want to focus on this, is you're going to take those two ratios, all the math that you use to generate them, and you're going to do it again, but you're going to take out all of the folks that your rep called that he removed from the list. So you gave him that list. Not everybody on that list is qualified. Some of them are out of business. Some are too small. Some are too large. Some don't fit your sweet spot. So if you'd known that in advance, you never would have called. Well, that becomes a penalty in the evaluation of a caller because you got them calling all these names that are bad. So what you want to do is take those names out and then rerun those two ratios. And a lot of times you'll be very surprised that, wow, it really was a penalty. They were below their target, but when I took the bad names out, they were on target. So those are a couple of things that you'd like to do. But if you could do those two metrics and do them then without the people that got removed, you'd have fantastic starting insight into where your program is weak and where it's strong. Then you can start making decisions.
Yeah, one of the things that I find to be really interesting is I see most companies, some of them will actually measure how many times someone dials the phone. Most of them will measure how many appointments, let's say in a week. They'll say, well, they're making 3 appointments every week or 6 appointments every week or whatever the number is. But because they don't measure the middle number, they don't actually know how their people are doing, because they could have somebody that's really, really good on the phone, and they're able to very quickly set up those 6 appointments that are needed. And then you could have somebody that's not really good on the phone who spends the entire week getting the same results. So they just don't know what works.
Yes.
If they don't have that middle number.
Exactly. And, in the idea about process measurements, the efficiency and the effective numbers, it does require all 3: dials, conversations, and appointments. But if you don't have that middle number, what you lose is the ability to discern, is your problem the process that we built, or is the problem the person operating the process? And that's what that middle number then gives you the ability to do, is to tease out if you've got a process issue or a personnel issue.
I'll jump in as a coach. The middle number enables you, if you've got someone that's dialing the phone and they're not having those conversations with decision makers, and I know as a coach, I've got to work with them on their gatekeeper skills or what they're saying on voicemails and emails. Or if they're talking to a lot of prospects and not setting any appointments, then I know what I need to work with them on there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Another point I'll make too, when we're talking about this, is that you're right. A lot of companies measure dials, and really dials is irrelevant. What you really want to measure is pursuits. So that ratio of conversations to pursuits is what you're interested in. Conversations to dials tells you nothing. And as a matter of fact, there are some industries where on that very first pursuit, you encourage your callers to maybe dial and talk to more than one person to try to qualify the account. So if I have a qualifying question, I'll ask the gatekeeper the qualifying question. That's always a good way to deal with gatekeepers. See if they'll tell you. And if the gatekeeper says they won't tell you, that's fine. Put me through. I'll leave a voicemail, or if I don't get them on the phone, send a follow-up email. But I'll actually call back and maybe with a phone tree, ask for the sales department. And I get a sales guy on the phone, and I'll tell the sales guy, I don't know how I got to you, but I've just been assigned your account. Very excited. And I'll ask them the qualifying question. But there's nothing wrong with dialing multiple times to try to get multiple people if you can qualify the account early on. So that's the reason the number of times they dial the phone is irrelevant to prospecting performance in the metric sense. But it is valuable to make more calls if you can qualify accounts by talking to someone other than the gatekeeper.
Yes, agreed. Agreed. Yeah. So I have so much I want to ask you. I want to ask you for some examples of, success stories from you. I'd also like to talk a little bit about maybe the different size companies and if that changes things. Before we do that, we're going to take a short pause for a word from our sponsor. And the sponsor is Salesology 3X Appointments. You know how frustrating and stressful it is when you leave every sales meeting wondering if your sales team knows how to sell, because they're not selling and all you ever hear from them are excuses. They blame your marketing. They say you need to do more social media. They say you need a new website. You know something is wrong, but you don't quite know what it is, and you're even starting to wonder if it's you. You don't have a lot of options. You could fire them all and start from scratch. That would be expensive, and you're really sick of waking up in the middle of the night wondering how to fix this. Well, imagine instead that you have an easy-to-use, replicable system that ensures your team can easily schedule qualified appointments. And imagine that your team is excited and motivated, no more excuses, and you feel good. Salesology 3X Appointments can make that happen. If you're a business owner or sales manager with an underperforming sales team, let's talk. Click on the link to my calendar in the show notes and schedule a time. And I look forward to meeting you. And so now I am back. I am back with Bob Howard, founder and president of Contact Science. So I want to ask you this. Does it matter when you're talking about a business process? Does it matter whether the company is a solopreneur or they're SMB or enterprise? Like, does it matter? Or what's the difference?
Well, the answer is it does not matter. Appointment setting is a very individualized task. Your rep is doing it. You got to focus on that rep and how well they're doing. If you have 10 reps, same thing. You just got 10 different people doing a very specific task. So the size of the team doesn't make any difference because it is such an individual skill set, and you have to treat them as individuals. So in our case, we see a lot of solopreneurs. We see a lot of companies that are owner-led sales, and they're getting an appointment setter, not a salesman, just nothing to set appointments for them. And then we have a lot of field reps that set their own appointments. So it's a mixture of reps, but it's all, their individual efforts. So it makes no difference if you got one or you got 50.
So even if you are a solopreneur, and let's say you don't even have an appointment setter, you're the one doing the appointment setting right now, you still need to have a business process in place for appointment setting.
Exactly. When we founded the company with our new strategy, our target market was the sales rep that is on straight commission, that works out of their house, and if they don't set appointments, they don't eat. So what we wanted to build was the easiest possible tool for them to use so they could do that and be successful at a very difficult task. So that was the original design. We achieved that, and then since then, we've built out an enterprise version, but the key mandate is still the same. the person that's doing the work, let's make it as easy for them as possible to do a difficult job.
And as a former ballet dancer, I love this idea of process because it really is. It is about the process, and I hear so many people in the sales arena that talk about, oh, well, they're just born with the gift of gab, or it's just like somehow it's intuitive, and some people are just somehow born knowing how to do this, and we know that's not true.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if you don't measure it, you don't know what works. And you can't replicate it. If you're a solopreneur and you want to hire an appointment setter, you can't replicate your results if you don't know what you're doing.
Yes, you can't improve it if you don't know what you're doing. And then once you've got the improvements done, and even if you're a solopreneur and you've been doing it yourself, when you hire someone, they need to just sit in your chair and be able to do it exactly like you did. And that's the value of process. You get it in place. Now all you need is someone else to sit in front of your machine and make the calls.
And if you manage a team and you're hiring someone new and you have the process and you've benchmarked it, you know what it is, you hire someone new, you can make them successful quickly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And some of our larger clients, we train people on our software for free. So it doesn't cost anything when you get a seat for contact science. But some of our larger clients, we never hear when they hire new people. And the reason is they say, well, we just sit and have them look over the shoulder for half a day. They learn the software and away they go. So it's interesting when you have big teams, how that training changes because they just can watch it. It's that easy to learn.
Yes. And what I've always loved about contact science is being able to see those scripts as you're making the calls so that you always know if you're in different markets with different scripts, you always know who you're talking to and what you're going to say. And it sort of removes some of the thinking.
Yes.
It just enables execution.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you share some before and after stories, clients, what was making them crazy and not working before they came to contact science, and then they once they understood the business process, what changed for them?
So I can give you a couple of maybe little war stories here, but and we see the first one a lot, where people come to us and say, I've got a really nice person. They seem skilled. I've had them on the phone now for 6 months. They just can't seem to generate appointments. I'm not sure what it is. I said, well, what tool are they using? And typically it's a CRM of some sort. So we put them on contact science. We work with the customer to get the messaging right. We really have them focus on the list. Lists are very important, but inevitably then performance improves almost immediately. And the callers will tell their boss, they say, well, it's not me, but now I understand is that I really didn't know how to operate it. I really didn't know what I was supposed to do. And what I was doing was difficult for me to do. So they immediately see this inefficiency that they'd had in the past. So a lot of times their caller, who would have otherwise been fired because they weren't performing, now all of a sudden is performing and they're delighted. Everybody's happy. The caller's happy and the manager's happy. But a lot of times, unfortunately, Wendy, you may see this also, that if the program's not working, the first thing they do is go, well, it must be the caller. And so they'll get rid of what otherwise would be a good caller. So that's, yes, we see that more than anything. Once people are on the process, it's interesting. One example was a client asked me to come and sit in on a review that they had their sales trainer there. So they just wanted me there and the sales trainer there. So the sales trainer had never seen a process report. So when we looked at it, it was obvious that the metric that measures generating conversations was very, very low. It was unbelievably low. So we then say, well, let's listen to some of the recordings and see how they did. And the skills trainer immediately said, that's not what we trained you to do in dealing with gatekeepers. So after my call, they did a little role play session and they worked through the dealing with gatekeepers. So if I remember right, the starting number that they had the week that we have reviewed it was 3% of the people that they pursued, they were getting a conversation with. The next week, the very next week, that number went to 8%. So it was incredible that we could identify very quickly in the process what the challenge was. We had a skills trainer there that says, hey, here's what you need to be doing. And the very next week, it improved, which is kind of unique in the process of appointment setting, is that over the weekend, you can make changes that could dramatically change performance the following week.
So I remember that you have shared with me, if you're looking at a calling campaign that's not working, or you have a calling campaign and you want to improve it, that there are 3 or 4 things that you need to look at in order to tweak or correct a calling campaign that's not working. So would you share the things you need to be looking at?
Sure.
For a calling campaign?
So when you look at any report that's talking about performance in appointment setting, you only have 3 areas of remedy. So the first area of remedy is the list. Now, it's not always because you got a bad list. It could be a list that you're calling into the wrong niche. So you can look and analyze performance and say, we're doing great with architects, but we're doing nothing with everybody else. Let's just start calling architects. So the list could actually be not a bad list of names, but the wrong list of names.
For your offering.
For your offering, exactly. You could not have email addresses, because emails are great touches. You don't get them, you leave a follow-up voicemail and send them now an email. So a lot of times you can improve that list there. But you can also at some point say, this list is terrible. It's old. People are no longer there. You need a new list. The second area to look at then is best practices. So you can look at some of your basic best practices, number of times to call, how frequently to call, voicemails that you're using, emails that you're using. You can always fine tune your cadence if you'd like. But there are other best practices you can consider. Some people at some point say, well, let's put direct mail in there as a prospecting touch. You can always add little widgets like that to improve your performance.
So when you're talking about best practice, you're talking about the process, the business process.
You're talking about the business process. And what we've just talked about is the pursuit plan best practice. But there are the best practices. There's operational best practices, such as, what do you do if someone's not there? Do you just change the name out, or do you clone it and keep the old name? That's always one. What do you do when you set an appointment? Who needs to know? And then how do you notify them? So a lot of those basic things put into place one time, you don't have to change them. But those best practices, those cadence, those pursuit plans, they should be revisited. You may find that your messaging is not as good as you initially thought. And then the third area is the skills area. And that is typically detected by listening to these conversations. I think that's the hardest task for management. I think it's the one that scares them the most, because they can listen to a recording of their rep's conversation that didn't turn into an appointment. And they're kind of intimidated because they don't know, did the rep do a good job or not? Did they handle that particular pushback well or not? So that third remedy area, the skill of the caller, is one that most managers don't do very well. And that's when they need to stay close to their skills trainer, because the skills trainer can come in and listen to a few, like my example earlier about the gatekeeper. They'll see exactly what the issue is. And a lot of times the manager going through a couple of those sessions, they get good at it. You don't really have to know how to set appointments in order to evaluate a rep that's setting appointments. You just need to understand the concepts that they were taught in their skills training classes. So that's why managers should go to your class, Wendy. They might not ever make a dial, but at least they'll understand what the caller should be doing.
Yes. Well, we actually, in our 3X Salesology 3X appointments, encourage managers to monitor the course for exactly this reason.
Yeah. It's one of the 3 areas that you can have a remedy in, and that's probably the hardest one for managers.
Yes. So, well, this has been great, Bob. Great information. And, it has gotten so much harder over the time that you and I have known each other, it gets harder and harder. Fewer and fewer phone lines are answered by actual human beings. So this idea of using a tool to be more efficient is really transformative.
Yes.
And so how can people get in touch with you? You mentioned contactscience.com. That's your website. We're going to put that in the show notes. And I encourage everyone to go to contactscience.com and scroll down to the bottom where the white paper is.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the name of the white paper again?
It has to do with a prospecting efficiency checkup.
Okay. Get your prospecting efficiency checkup at contactscience.com. So that will be in the show notes. And is that the best way for people to reach out to you if they want more information?
Yes, there's also a chat button at the top, and it's actually my personal calendar. So if you're interested in just having a chat about what you guys are doing now and what you could do different, then just get on my calendar. I love to talk about this stuff.
There you go. Book a chat with Bob.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you, Bob Howard, for being here today and sharing all this information about prospecting efficiency. And I want to thank all of our listeners for being here, for listening to Salesology Conversations with Sales Leaders. Please share us on social media, tell your friends, give us good reviews, and until we meet again, visualize yourself surrounded by cash, really large bills.
You've been listening to Salesology, Conversations with Sales Leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. Be sure to follow so that you don't miss a single episode. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review and be sure to share it with your friends. Tune in every week for more exciting insights and wisdom on transforming sales. And until next time, visualize yourself surrounded by cash, very large bills.